Well, you may know him as Kunta Kinte from Roots, Commander Geordi LaForge from Star Trek The Next Generation, or the host of the iconic kids TV program Reading Rainbow.
Actor, director, and literacy advocate Levar Burton can do it all. And he just started a new season of his podcast and released the paperback version of his children's book, The Rhino Who Swallowed a Storm. And he joins us now to discuss it all. Thanks so much for joining us. As you can see, I'm so excited.
Good morning, lady.
Well, Levar, we're going to start off with this. A lot of people in the Black community specifically grew up watching Roots. I already know that I did. My dad literally made my brother, my sister, and I sit down and watch the whole entire series. I was like 7. And in Roots, you played the iconic character Kunta Kinte, and the late, great Cicely Tyson played your mother. So can you talk about your relationship with her and how you felt when you heard the news of her passing?
Oh, it was a shock. And over the past couple of days, I've really tried to puzzle it out. Why? And it comes down to this for me. There hasn't been a time in my life when Cicely Tyson hasn't been there, and I just assumed that she would always be there. And when she passed the other day, it just so caught me off guard because my universe, there's a hole in the universe now where Cicely was. She was my first screen mother, and it was always that way between us, like mother and son. Whenever I would see her, I would greet her deferentially, "Hello, mother," and she would give me that nod of approval, "son." And that's just how it was with us, and not just me. I mean, I know she had a similar relationship with so many, countless, legions, really, of others, and so there is a hole. There is a hole for all of us, for Black people, for white people, for those who love dignity, honor, justice, equality. There is a hole.
What legacy do you say that she leaves behind, and what can we learn from the life that she lived and the way she lived her life?
She lived life on her own terms. She was incredibly strong of character. Remember, at a time when Black people weren't on TV, she was the first African American to be on a series regular on television. She refused roles that did not honor and uphold the dignity of Black people. She was a pioneer in so many ways, and then she was simply just one of the most talented, beautiful women of her generation.
And, like we mentioned earlier, Levar, you are multi-hyphenate, to say the least. And you also have a podcast that's now in its 8th season. It's called Levar Burton Reads, where you read these short stories. It honestly brings me back to my childhood, of course, with Reading Rainbow. Why did you decide to even start the podcast in the first place?
The podcast for me was an opportunity. I mean, I had my ear to the podcasting industry as it began to sort of take off, and for me it was a way for me to engage in storytelling, which is what I do, without any barrier to entry. The idea was just me and a story, and that was really kind of it. I love short stories. And so the idea was to just read a short story in every episode. And then we sort of sweeten that experience with a minimum of soundscaping, just to locate the audience in the moment. And that's really it. I wanted to do something creative that I didn't have to ask anyone's permission to do, right? Like I said, it's just me and the story. The thing that I discovered is that generation that grew up on Reading Rainbow was clamoring to be engaged in storytelling once again. And I've really enjoyed having a relationship with that audience wherein I continue to expose them to new artists, writing voices that they might not ordinarily have encountered. And for me, that's a great joy, shining the light on so much literary. And of it, I love short stories. And so the idea was to just read a short story in every episode, and then we sort of sweeten that experience with a minimum of soundscaping, just to locate the audience in the moment. And that's really it. I wanted to do something creative that I didn't have to ask anyone's permission to do, right? Like I said, it's just me and the story. The thing that I discovered is that generation that grew up on reading Rainbow was clamoring to be engaged in storytelling once again. And I've really enjoyed having a relationship with that audience wherein I continue to expose them to new artists, writing voices that they might not ordinarily have encountered. And for me, that's a great joy, shining the light on so much literary talent that is just not mainstream yet.
And I think that this is honestly so awesome, because for those of us who remember you and watched you and know all of Reading Rainbow, now we get to share this little piece of history of our childhood with, our children and the children to come. So speaking of reading and books, let me know, I want to know, what are your favorite top books?
Wow. It really tends to be whatever I'm reading at the time, but if you want to go all time top, I'm a big science fiction fan, so Octavia Butler is at the top of that list. Anything by Octavia Butler. The world of speculative fiction has just exploded, and as I said, there are all of these new voices that are being heard, and it's just such a rich and fertile time for speculative fiction, which is to say, a fiction that imagines a past, present, or future where Black people, where people of color, where marginalized people are centered. And we can tell our stories. I think speculative fiction is really very political in nature, in as much as it's a revolutionary act of imagining a future where we are centered. And as a longtime science fiction fan, I'm just so thrilled to be alive now to encounter all of these different voices: Nnedi Okorafor, Leslie Neka Arima. There's just so many wonderful writers that are sharing their gifts, their talents with us these days. And part of my joy of Levar Burton Reads is shining a light on that.
And Levar, you obviously don't just read books. You do have a children's book yourself. It's called The Rhino Who Swallowed a Storm. That's now available in paperback. Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this book?
Well, Fred Rogers was a big inspiration to me. He was both a friend and a mentor. And a few years ago, just with the prevalence of mass shootings in public and floods and hurricanes and all of these catastrophes, it occurred to me that if he were alive, Fred would without question address these issues and aspect of life in an age-appropriate way with our kids. And Fred were here, and so I thought, let me take a shot. And so The Rhino Who Swallowed a Storm is an attempt on my part to really craft a tale of loss and recovery. Fred always said, look for the helpers. And in the book, the rhino swallows a storm, and then he goes on a journey looking for help to help him get the storm out of his body. And he encounters, friends, strangers along the way. And the moral of the story is none of us get through this life alone, and that whenever we are faced with overwhelming catastrophe, look for the helpers.
Well, Levar, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I am just so excited to be able to get this book for her now. But of course, we know you have done, and you continue to do it all. So along with your podcast, what other projects are you working on, and along with your book as well?
Well, I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories in whatever way I can. So I direct episodes of NCIS NOLA. I do my podcast. My company, Levar Burton Entertainment, we are developing several projects for film and TV. I just stay busy doing what it is I do because I have no other choice. It's just if I don't do this, then I feel like I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And I really am lucky to have found my purpose early in life, and storytelling is what I believe I was born to do.
Honestly, Levar, I can definitely speak to that because when I was younger, you were like a central in my household. This is just a quick testimony. Like Ashley was saying, reading Rainbow was everything. And when I was younger, I actually had trouble reading. And people would never guess because I'm an anchor and everything like that. But I was so nervous. I did not have good eyesight. I was afraid to read in class. And then I'd go home and I would watch Reading Rainbow. And you would give us and instill in us all this confidence and make these stories come alive. I just remember the Magic School Bus and all the other stories that you had. And it gave me the confidence to be able to read in class and to be able to do everything that I'm doing. Because honestly, without Reading Rainbow, I would say it, and you can ask my mom and everything, my family, I would not be where I am today. So I definitely wanted to say thank you for that. And definitely thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I still have the song in my head, Lauren. I don't know about you. It's going. It's in there.
Butterfly in the sky.
Yes.
All day long.
Oh, we appreciate you so much here on BNC. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate y'all.